Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the greatest rock and roll stories in the universe, all from the fans' perspective. It's Rock Stories with the Brummster. Now, here's the host of the show, my rockin' daddy, the Brummster.
Hey, it is the Brummster, Rock Stories with the Brummster. That's two M's, by the way. If you just see one M, get out of Dodge. Okay, so it's real Rock Stories time. We've got so many cool friends from Fans on the Run, been putting you in touch with lately because of superstar, super fan, my Aunt Sue, came on the program several shows back, and she let me know, I know so many cool people that have just seen and done so much in the world of rock and roll. You should talk with them. And I got their numbers, and you're their friends as well. We're able to pull back the curtain and give you a bird's eye view from the fans' perspective of the greatest rock and roll memories, concert memories, artist memories out there. Ultimately, it's not just recounting of the memories and having fun and great conversation. Obviously, that's a part of it. But another big part of it, too, is transporting us back in time, man. Music and the stories that go along with the tunage are basically my version of a time machine. And I enjoy hopping back in time with you every single program right here. Rock Stories with the Brummster at the Brummster Spotify channel. And also as well Sundays at 11 a.m. on rockradio559.com. Let's get it rockin'. The newest rock story to be added to our edition. Ricci Valice, welcome to the program. He is a rocker. You love rock. You love music. You love all things music, right, Ricci?
Oh yeah, I live and breathe music for sure.
Yep. And
I've been playing piano since I was like 3, so it's in my blood.
A musician at heart. I love it. I love it. And when I mentioned that's correct, isn't it? Recounting these stories, it's entertaining, it's nice, it's nostalgic, but it also is like a time machine as well, isn't it?
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, so much great music just like feels timeless. I mean, you listen to like stuff from the 60s or 70s, you're just right back there again, and a lot of the best bands, it just sounds like they released it the other day, too. It's crazy what music can do in distorting time for you.
Yep. Space-time continuum is being rattled here. We're making sure we shake up the jar and getting all the sediment off the bottom so that you get everything mixed into your rock and roll drink, right? Your rock and roll smoothie. You just got back from the gym. How appropriate. So, Ricci, let's go back in time. By the way, real quick, Rock Stories with the Brummster again. All things Brummster at the Brummster Spotify channel and at rockradio559.com. Ricci Valice, our special guest today with his Rock Stories with the Brummster edition. Welcome to the show, Ricci. Ricci, let's go back in time. Let's take our listeners with us. Talk a little bit about your rock and roll, memories. What you can pull from as far as what means the most to you.
Yeah, for sure. Well, firstly, thanks for having me on the program. I'm like I said, I love music, so I think I've got a lot I could gush all day long about this stuff, man. So I think my first memory of rock would just be like listening to whatever my dad was playing by the pool. My dad was a huge, Beatles fan, Led Zeppelin fan, just like kind of that era of classic rock. So from the time I was like, before I even had memories, it was just kind of always on in the house. And he had some guitars laying around too. And he was actually a bass player in a band in the 70s or 80s. I don't know which, but some time ago. But I mean, it's just kind of been my whole soundtrack to my childhood, all this great music. And went to my first concert when I was, I think, 13. It was a Paul McCartney concert in San Francisco. And just before then, actually, I'd picked up the bass and started playing in bands because I wanted to be like Paul, and started playing guitar and stuff like that. And it's just kind of been kind of been my whole life since I was little.
Yeah, it's been with you since you were walking, since you were a toddler, since you barely started walking, you were rocking. That's what I'm talking about. So what's your favorite? Obviously, you met, Aunt Sue and the whole gang of Fans on the Run, and we'll definitely get to that. But, what do you have a favorite, or is that down the same lane as the Fans on the Run program? What do you love the most? Who is your favorite artist? What's your favorite concert memories, Ricky?
Well, definitely the Beatles. I always use a fun metaphor to describe this to people. So for me, the top three is like Beatles, Led Zeppelin, and Rolling Stones. And I always say that like the Rolling Stones are like the tallest building on Earth, which I think is like maybe the Burj Khalifa or something like that. But it's like you look at it, you're like, wow, that is a tall building. It's the tallest building on Earth. And that's the Rolling Stones. You're like, wow, they are great. And then you go a little further out and you get to the moon, and you're like, well, someday humanity will go to the moon. And then obviously eventually we did. It's like, I don't know how many miles away from the Earth, but to me, that's Led Zeppelin, just like way beyond anything else that's here on Earth. And in the Beatles, while the sun would probably be a fitting metaphor, I think actually the Beatles are like the ever-expanding edge of the universe. I think that's the only metaphor to describe how great the Beatles are to me. So, they're definitely my favorite. I mean, there's just so much to love about them. I mean, I always say, like, whether you like metal or, like, sad songs, happy songs, pop songs, orchestral music, I mean, there's just kind of everything to love in the Beatles. So I kind of always keep coming back to that.
That's what I'm talking about. You have a love for music, and just like Dave Grohl, right, from Foo Fighters, started off loving the Beatles. And that's what, right? And now he's hanging out with Paul McCartney in his living room while he's teaching Dave Grohl's kid how to play the piano, eating pizza and drinking wine. Right. Is that a trip or what?
It's quite the perk of being a rock star. Have Paul McCartney teach your kid piano.
Wow. Full circle. Full circle. That's what he always says. Full circle.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, everybody since they came around had that same feeling. I mean, for the most part, everyone's influenced by them. And, their music's just so fresh. I can listen to them just about every day. I'd be happy.
So band experiences, going to these concerts, give us some behind-the-scenes looks at, what it is you felt, and who did you see, and what are your thoughts?
I've seen a lot of bands. I've been very fortunate in that regard. I feel like I have to exclude Paul McCartney just because I'm such a mega fan. I feel like I have to exclude him for now, at least from the listing. But I've seen Fleetwood Mac. I've seen the Stones several times, and I've seen a lot of bands. I think the best concert I've been to, again, aside from Paul, is probably Roger Waters. Actually, I saw him at Desert Trip, which I think Sue was at too. But it was basically this festival that happened where they do Coachella, and it was Bob Dylan, Rolling Stones, Neil Young, Paul McCartney, Roger Waters, and The Who. And so I went into that weekend thinking like, well, I'll probably like Paul, definitely like the Rolling Stones and The Who, because those are kind of the biggest names to me. But man, did I underestimate Roger Waters. I mean, that was just one of the best shows I've ever seen. And my friend and I were in like the pit right up front, and I think it was Eclipse or something from Dark Side of the Moon, where we were suddenly in this like prism of light that was kind of made to look like the cover of Dark Side of the Moon, and it just was one of the most magical experiences I've ever had. And I think at the end they closed with Comfortably Numb, and somebody was doing this rockin' guitar solo. It wasn't David Gilmour, but it was somebody like doing his solo very faithfully. And I was like, where is this guitar coming from? And I look up and he's on top of this mega jumbotron, just like hair flowing in the wind, belting out this solo in front of, I think it was like 100,000 people that show, something crazy. And it was just unforgettable. Absolutely unforgettable.
Yeah, Roger Waters actually took Gilmour and Pink Floyd to court, saying, when he left back in the day, saying that I am Pink Floyd. And so now, notwithstanding that argument between them and Gilmour coming back with more Pink Floyd hits and proving that Pink Floyd could continue on without Roger Waters, I've heard Brooke Hanner was at that, and he was on a Rock Stories with the Brummster, my buddy, a couple episodes back. He recounted the story that you just did from Coachella, seeing Roger Waters, and he said the same exact thing. It was magical. It was awesome. And from his perspective, and a lot of people, including Roger Waters is Pink Floyd. That's not downing, or I'm not going to get involved between him and David, right? We're not here to do that. But what do you think about that? Pink Floyd, real or not real? Roger Waters getting up there, he is Pink Floyd, isn't he?
To be honest, I really don't know as much about Pink Floyd like I do about the Beatles. Like, I could definitely talk all day long about, like, you know, John versus Paul with the Beatles, but I really don't know the extent of, like, Roger Waters versus David Gilmour's contribution. Like, I think Comfortably Numb is a David Gilmour song, but beyond that, I just really love Pink Floyd, you know?
Right.
And whoever wrote the song, I mean, all their music was just recreated so well and just, like, so beautifully, I thought.
Oh no, the truth is that regardless of that conflict that went on between the two, you mentioned Pink Floyd there, and then also Fleetwood Mac earlier. You know, a lot of conflict behind the scenes there as well. Heck, they just fired Lindsey Buckingham, right? And out of all that conflict between these artists on the same team, ends up coming out some of the best rock and roll ever, right? I'm not pro conflict, but wow, if that's the rock and roll that comes out of it, you know, it might not be such a bad thing, huh?
Totally. I mean, like, conflict, or even just, like, in a more mild sense, just like kind of tension or competition, I just breathe kind of great things, I think. I mean, like, if you're totally 100% comfortable at ease, you know, there's almost like no real reason to push yourself and try to come up with something great unless there's a reason, you know. And it's not always like a competition thing, but often that can be a pretty good one, I think.
I think so too. You don't just get muscles from sitting on the couch. You've got to go in and put them to work. Yes. And Comfortably Numb. You are rocking with the Brummster folks. I've got our good friend Ricci Valice with us, and he's an awesome rock fan. Fans on the Run included. Amazing stories here today for you. Behind the scenes from the fans' perspective, rock stories with the Brummster. You mentioned Comfortably Numb. Some of my best friends would always just, it would come on the radio and they'd be like, oh yeah, Comfortably Brumm. I can't help myself. I love that song as well, man. I love that song as well. So
it's like, it's your theme song.
It should be, right?
Comfortably Brumm.
There you go. I have become Comfortably Brumm right here. Rock Stories with the Brummster. I love it, man. Ricci Valice on the program with us today. The Stones, amazing. They came back, you know, they lose a band member and they come back and they kick off a North American tour. Man, Mick Jagger, the leader, you know, just amazing how he continues to, I heard he brings like an entire gym with him on tour wherever he goes so he can stay in top shape. It's amazing.
Oh yeah.
How these guys are, I mean, they're in their 70s. I mean, I remember when I was a kid and my grandpa was 70 and, you know, frail and everything at that age. And what these guys are doing at 70 is off the charts, huh?
I know. 70 is the new 40 in 2022. It's funny, though. I actually saw the Rolling Stones in November, I think it was, in Austin. I mean, just the way Mick Jagger runs and skips around, I feel like he's in much better shape than I am, and I'm like 50 years younger than him, you know?
Right. That's fact. That's a fact. I want his yogurt. I want his diet. Right. He got off of drugs a long time ago. Totally. You could tell.
Yeah, he's still kicking, man. He's going to be around for a long time, I think. I hope.
Now, Fleetwood Mac, we referenced them just a moment ago from some of the concerts that you have seen. What version of Fleetwood Mac did you see?
I've seen them a few times. I think I've seen them with every single member once, which would have been Stevie Nicks, Lindsey Buckingham, both McVies, and Mick Fleetwood. Yeah, I've definitely seen that lineup at least once, and which is great for me because one of my mom's favorite songs is You Make Loving Fun, which was a Christine McVie song, and so I kind of always grew up with that as my favorite Fleetwood Mac song, so that was pretty cool to be able to see them and see her do that. But yeah, I saw the full thing, man. I saw the OG.
I love it. The OG, the original gangsta. I love it. And Christine McVie's up there, like I said, all that drama going on. You've got John McVie, their exes. You've got, right? Isn't that amazing? You got Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, and you've got that drama between them. Stevie had a thing with Mick Fleetwood at the same time. What in the heck is going on with this band? Huh?
I know, it's one big happy family. Yeah, I'm not sure how they even got music out amidst all that. It's quite the achievement, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think so as well. And mentioning Morley was on the Bartnoff was on the program with us a little bit ago, and he was talking all about that as well, and just how that right, these artistic differences, they don't have to be the death nail. They can actually propel our artists to do something greater than they've ever done before.
Absolutely.
So moving on, you got a killer music collection, I would guess. I presume that you're proud of.
Well, these days it's all Spotify, but yeah, I've got thousands of songs saved, something like that. But I mean, my dad was the big music collector. I mean, just like hundreds, maybe even thousands of CDs that he has on this big case. He used to collect vinyl, obviously, when those were coming out, but he sold them, I think, in the early 80s or something, his full vinyl collection. But yeah, I had a lot of CDs growing up, but these days it's all digital.
Yep, but we're not doing it like we used to. I don't know the last time I used a CD on purpose. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
Now, my friend...
I have started collecting more and more vinyl, though. I've got kind of a sizable collection now, but to me, it's like, I mean, it's just so much more entertaining to have the vinyl. You get to look at the cover, you get to, open the sleeve up, look at the lyrics sometimes, and just like, it's just such a more visual, auditory experience, I think.
It is. It sounds different. My buddy Brian K. Martinez, he hosts Finally a Friday, 6 to 7 after I get done doing the hard drive at 5 every Friday at rockradio559.com. Great online rock station. Check that out. Tell your friends, Ricky, listen to it. It's awesome. rockradio559.com. And a couple times a year, he'll go on like these all vinyl album side weekends. He's just like you. He's got just oodles of vinyl in his collection. And he transferred them all digitally. So you hear the needle drop, you hear the crackles, you hear the sound, you hear the grooves. There's just something different about that, cool. Isn't it?
Totally, yeah. There's actually a local station here in Austin that I listen to that does like vinyl Wednesdays. And yeah, it's that same thing. It's just such a nostalgic sound. And I didn't even grow up listening to vinyl. It's still somehow a nostalgic sound.
Yep, it's making a comeback. It is. I even see it over at Target. I see some pretty badass albums like sitting on the shelf. I'm like, whoa, Target? Really? Wow.
No, Target's stepping their game up.
I don't just go there anymore for cat litter. What adventures have you been on as of late? Obviously, you wanted to save the best for last, and we'll get there. Fans on the Run. Let's talk a little bit about that. I do want to go there. Paul McCartney, the Beatles. Talk a little bit about some of the artists. Have you met anyone cool?
Yeah, definitely. I want to start, but I want to preface that by saying, or telling you the story of when I first met Sue. Actually, it was at a Paul McCartney concert in Vancouver. I think I was like 15 years old, and I just started seeing how people could get on stage with Paul. If they have like a clever enough sign or something like that, or if they know the certain place to camp out. And at that point in my life, I was just like gung ho Beatles fan. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, I need to see Paul. I need to meet him in person. He needs to know like that there's how much this means to me and my family. And and I grew up in Washington State, so Vancouver was only like a couple hour drive from me. So I remember I got tickets to the sound check to see him, and my friend and I were like, we're going to be at the front of the line to get down to the sound check so we can like have the perfect primo spot to like set up and show Paul our sign. And we were faster than everyone else except one person, which was your Aunt Sue. And she beat us, man. She was cutthroat. She knew how to get to the front. She was a woman on a mission, and that was the first time I saw her. And she was very nice to me, and that's kind of how we became friends. And a couple years later, I think, I was trying again in Seattle, which is closer to home for me. And I had a sign that was like, oh, man, I can't remember what my first sign was. It had something to do with Abe, which is Paul's drummer. And so Paul is reading it from the audience. He's just finished his sound check. He's about to go backstage. And he's like, well, okay, well, come on up. Why don't you? And so I'm like, oh, my God, is this real? And so my friend and I, we just, like, jumped this barricade, and we're walking up to go see Paul. I mean, we're just kind of following this one Scottish security guard. We're like, it feels like someone's going to tackle us, right? Like, surely we can't be doing this. And we go behind the stage, up these big flight of stairs to the stage, which was this is at Safeco Field in Seattle, which I think has been renamed since. But so we go up these stairs. I'm like, in shock, right? And there's a line of people to the right that have just been watching the sound check. And I'm kind of scanning their faces really quickly. And I realized that two of them are Dave Grohl and Chris Novoselic of Nirvana. And, for me, because, I've been in bands since I was in, like, 8th grade up in Washington, but they were always three-piece bands, like guitar, bass, drums. And so to us, Nirvana was, like, the greatest thing a band could be from small-town Washington, which is where they are from. So, I mean, it was just an unbelievable moment where I'm going to meet my idol, and then I see my other secondary idols there. Obviously, Kurt Cobain's gone, but so I, like, had a freak out before I met Paul. It's just like, so I went up to them, and I was like, I think I just said their names to them. Like, I was in such shock, I didn't know how to say, like, hey, how are you? I got a second? I was just like, Dave Grohl, Chris Novoselic. And they're like, yes, those are our names. And, yeah, actually, Chris Novoselic was really nice to me. He was asking me a lot about, my band and my interests, just kind of like rapid fire. And I don't really remember Dave Grohl saying anything, but I also don't remember how I even left that conversation. I was in such shock. I think I just kind of like turned around and walked up another set of stairs to go talk to Paul. And that was pretty incredible. I mean, yeah, I just... It's one thing to see him on TV or listen to his music, and then to be there in front of you, just like an actual person that exists, is just kind of hard to put into words, honestly. It's just really shocking more than anything. Yeah, so that was the first time I met Paul. And then...
and when you got up on stage, you do anything, or was it just like what? How did that go once you got up there?
Let's see, the first time I definitely gave him a hug right away. I remember that. And then I think I was just like, I said some random things, just generic, like anything I could think of. I was just like, I know all of your songs. And he's like, yo, I bet you do. He's like, he's got thousands of songs. Of course, I don't know all of them, but he probably hears that all the time. yeah, I remember just saying some very generic thing. I mean, I was like 16 or something. It can't have been super cool. But, yeah, and then actually Abe gave me his drumsticks, which I have framed in my studio that he just did the sound check with. And we got a picture.
Who gave you the drumsticks?
Abe Laboriel, Paul's drummer.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
And you still have
and they're
those?
really cool sticks. Yeah, I got them framed in my studio. They're like really nice. They're his like signature Vic Firth sticks. They're really long drumsticks with like a rubber grip on the bottom of them. I wish I could play them or use them, but I don't want to damage them. But yeah, I mean it was just pretty amazing. And that show, Paul brought on Dave and Chris because they had just written a song together that year called "Cut Me Some Slack." And I think they like dubbed it Sirvana. It was like the reunion of Nirvana, but with Sir Paul McCartney.
Nice, Sirvana. I love it, man.
Yeah, so that was awesome to see, and I felt cool, like, because there was a rumor that they were going to appear, but I was like one of the first to know, at least from the fans' side of it, because obviously they were there watching the sound check. And then I don't often tell this story, but I think the most cringe-worthy moment in my entire life was when, I mean, it's understandable, but I was walking down, I think this was when I was taking a picture with Abe or maybe getting a six or something, but I walked back down the stairs to like that platform that Dave and Chris were on, and like I was walking behind Paul as he approaches Dave, and they're like clearly haven't seen each other in, I don't know, a while, maybe it's just only been a day or something, but they had this big hug, like, hey, it's so good to see you. And, you know, I was being kind of like shuffled back off stage, but I wanted to like say thank you. Like, this is such an amazing experience. Like, you know, I just wanted to show some appreciation. So I tapped Paul on the back and also Dave at the same time because they were hugging each other, but then they weren't reacting to me like patting them on the back. So I was just like, kept patting them on the back while everyone was standing around just like mortified by this kid just like intervening in this hug. And then and then I walked off, and it was cringe, but understandable. I don't think they even really noticed.
No, but you are going to be able to spend the rest of your life, as are all of you listening right now, pulling back the curtain, rock stories with the Brummster, Ricci Valice, from the fans' perspective. We're now all a part of that cringe-worthy story, and we're proud of you for patting him on the back, man. That's so rad, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I was 16. What are you going to do? It's just kind of can be an awkward phase for some people, certainly for me. But, yeah, so that was the first time I met him, and then the second time was a few years later, and it was essentially just a repeat of the first time in Seattle, without Dave and Chris, but yeah, I mean it was great again, and this time I actually had the presence of mind to ask him to sign something. So I've got this like the sign that I used to get on stage. Then the second time I've got also framed and signed by the full band, actually, including Paul, and that's definitely one of my like most prized possessions for sure. And then the third time I was like, well, shoot, man, like I'm like 2 for 2 on this. Like, I can't go to a show and not try to get on stage. Like, it seems to be really easy as of, you know, for me so far. So the third time was in Chicago because, you know, my family had been wanting to take a trip to Chicago for some time. And then when we saw that Paul was going to play there, we thought it would be a, you know, kind of opportune time to go. And so I took my friend, and this time our sign said, it was like a pun on one of his recent songs called Queenie Eye. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but it's like, I think it was like from 2013 or something. It's like, Queenie Eye, who's got the ball? So our sign said, Queenie Eye, we've got the balls to play a song with you. And mind you, this wasn't during the sound check. This was during like the full show, you know, in front of his, you know, 20 or 30,000 people, something like that.
And you're a drummer, right, Ricci? What did you play with him? Or forgive me for jumping ahead.
I guess I'll get to that. But I'm mainly a guitar player, or piano player. But no, I'm not a drummer. I wish I were a drummer. Kind of sometimes like to just sit in the back and not I have to address the crowd. That can always be difficult, but no. So he reads the sign from stage. He's like, Queenie Eye, we've got the balls to play a song with you. Well, okay, come on up. So this is during the actual show. My friend and I get shuffled up on stage, and there's like a bit of a waiting period where he does a couple other songs first, which were, I have to look at the set from that night, but I think in my memory it was Sgt. Pepper and then Yesterday. So then, like, I'm just standing backstage watching him perform Yesterday in front of this huge crowd. I mean, it's just, I've never seen a crowd like that from a stage, obviously. It's just like a monolith at that point. It's crazy. And so he says, okay, who have we got here? So my friend and I actually walk up to the stage, and he's like reading our sign, Queenie, we got the balls. Well, I'm not going to ask to see them. And like making all these jokes in front of the crowd. And he's like, okay, what's your name? And I'm like, I'm Ricky, like in front of all these people. And yeah, it was just, I mean, I could go on all day about it, but it's difficult to describe the emotion that is, A, being in front of that many people, just like the public speaking aspect of it. B, being in front of that many people with my hero, Paul McCartney, and much of the world's hero too. Just was pretty transcendental. And then, so he's like, well, what do you play? I'm like, I play guitar. And then my friend's like, I play drums. Could I sit in for Abe on a song? And Paul was just very quickly just like, no, you can't. But you can pretend you play the drums. And then basically we just sang with him. So we sang Get Back was the song that we did with him. And yeah, I mean, we're all sharing a microphone, like, you know, those early pictures of the Beatles you see, like John, George, and Paul. And I have a picture of the three of us framed also in my studio, my friend Carson and I, and Paul just like super close to this microphone singing Get Back. I mean, it's just a priceless experience that been very fortunate to have.
I have goosebumps right now, man. Oh, wow. And so does our audience listening to Real Rock Stories with the Brummster from the fans' perspective, actually on stage, sharing the same microphone during a show, not a sound check, singing Get Back with Sir Paul McCartney, bro. Wow. Goosebumps, man. Goosebumps.
I know. It was pretty wild. I can't even watch the video to this day. It makes me too nervous to even watch. It was such a crazy, terrifying experience.
What did that do for you as a musician? Did it inspire you? And you say you have a studio there at home. So is this something that, you know, is big in your life, not just as a fan, but as a musician as well? Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it helps us get like certain things. Like, for example, we're playing a Beatles festival in Indiana on Memorial Day weekend in about a month or so. So, you know, that they asked me to play, I think, mainly because of this connection with Paul. So it gets to certain things like that within the Beatles community. But as a musician, you know, it doesn't really have that much of an effect because I still am me, and like I still try to write my own songs and put out my own songs. And, you know, because we're not just like a Beatles cover band, like we have our own original music. So I don't know that it really affects me much as a musician other than I'm just like, man, that was a crazy time that I'll remember forever. I mean, it's like if somebody born in the 1800s had sang with Mozart or played piano with Mozart or something like that, you know, it's like something that something will be pretty amazing as time goes on. What type of tunage do you play then as far as your own original stuff with your band? What's your band's name?
The band name is Valice, which is just my last name because I like put out a solo project basically and then filled the band out to kind of play it live. So we shortened it from my full name, Ricci Valice, to just Valice. But yeah, it's like, you know, indie pop rock mixture, I would say. I think people say we remind them of the Arctic Monkeys a lot. It's definitely got some Beatles influences for sure, but yeah, very kind of modern pop sound for some stuff.
That's how the Foo Fighters was formed. Dave Grohl went and just did his own tracks all on his own, and then filled in the blanks with his band members once he turned in the tape and realized, you know what, I got a band here. I need to fill those spots, you know?
Totally, yeah. There's definitely a similar thing for me where I like recorded all the instruments myself and then got booked for a show, and they're like, well, you have a band, right? Like, you can play all this stuff live. And I was like, oh, yeah, totally. I've got a band. And then I realized, shoot, I need to find some people real quick.
What is it? Me, myself, and I, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, and that's kind of how the band formed, because I had to get a bunch of people together really quickly for a show. And we've been playing together for, almost 3 years now. So
that's awesome.
Been going pretty well.
Coming up Memorial Day weekend in Indiana. Where's the venue again so folks can check you out?
It's at Big Four Station Park, which is in Jeffersonville, Indiana, which is essentially Louisville, Kentucky proper, but it's like just across the river from it. But yeah, Jeffersonville, Indiana.
Awesome, man. Thanks for sharing your rock stories with us and pulling back the curtain, and especially those personal moments that like every fan is salivating with, living vicariously through your story, I mean, really just, I'm sitting here and I'm seeing all the hairs on my arm standing up and goosebumps everywhere. I'm like, wow, you just get that flush that comes over you when someone, I feel like I'm a part of the story and I was actually up on stage with you guys, man. That is so cool.
Yeah, it was really amazing. I mean, I look at the pictures from that every once in a while, and there's a picture that I looked at the other day where Paul is just like kind of like grabbing my shoulder a little bit, just like a really like affirmatory way, which is like a really kind of powerful picture to look at sometimes. Like if you're feeling down, you're like, man, that's what a crazy picture to have that, I'll definitely remember a long time.
What does your future look like? In regards to being a music fan and a musician, what are you looking forward to, Ricky?
Well, as far as a fan, I mean, talk about the Beatles a lot, obviously. I'm going to be seeing Paul a week from tomorrow up in Spokane, and then up in Seattle too. So definitely looking forward to that. As a personal musician, I mean, I'm just always kind of making my own songs and putting them out and hoping people like them, and yeah, just kind of taking it one day at a time as far as that's concerned.
Well, you do me a favor. Every Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I have a one hour program called The Hard Drive at 5 with the Brummster, where I play rockin' jams for people's drive home at rockradio559.com. That's rockradio559.com every Friday at 5. Hard Drive at 5 with the Brummster. And on this channel, it's through live365.com, so they handle all the music licensing and stuff like that, so we can play anything. But I, being the host, can play any dang thing I want. And so do me a favor, Ricky, when we get off of this call today, if you don't mind, message me a link to an MP3 of a song that you'd like me to play. And when I go in and record it, it'll come out on that following Friday show, and I'll make sure that I message you so that you know that it's going to air. But I'd be happy to play your song on my program as well.
Yeah, you bet. That'd be awesome.
Awesome.
Definitely send you that.
Well, Ricci Valice and his band Valice, make sure you check them out. Valice, look that up. He's going to be in Indiana Memorial Day weekend. And, of course, fans on the run, you got your whole Paul McCartney setup lined up. Sounds like for the next few shows, you're dialed in, man. So,
oh, yeah.
Safe travels out there, and make sure you rub those elbows with my Aunt Sue. You totally rock, Ricky. Thanks for being on the program, bud.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Hang on the line for our engineers, Ricky, and I'll be right with you. Rock stories with the Brummster, real rock stories from the fans' perspective. We pull back the curtain so you could see behind the scenes and get to live vicariously through these stories. And it's like a time machine traveling back in time. I mean, that story right there, I felt like I was on stage, singing Get Back with Ricci Valice and Paul McCartney and his friend. I feel like I was up there. How about you, right? Hey, tune in every single week, 11 a.m. on rockradio559.com every Sunday. And also as well, all things Brummster at the Brummster Spotify channel. That's 2 M's. You see 1 M, you get out of Dodge. That's right. Brummster Spotify channel, rockradio559.com. And would you like a free Today in Rock History every single day? If you Google or YouTube Today in Rock History, you're going to get some generic Today in Rock History thing, not applicable to each day or that day that you're actually viewing it. But if you type in Today in Rock History with the Brummster, you will get a fresh, brand new, applicable to that day that you're looking at it. Short 2 or 3 minutes, real fun and entertaining. Today in Rock History every single day. Like our videos and subscribe to our channel, Today in Rock History with the Brummster YouTube channel. Until next time, thanks for joining us for Rock Stories with the Brummster podcast. Have a wonderful week and keep rocking on.